Chapter 6. Jimmy looked out the window of the train as it neared Lawrence, Kansas. His face showed no interest. His first train ride had been exciting at first, but it was not enough to keep him cheerful. He had been lonely all that long spring and summer of 1898, and everything he did made him think of Charlie. Swimming, fishing, hunting, riding, and even doing the chores. Most of all, just running through the woods looking for stunts to do. Now Pa was sending him to school at Haskell Institute. Jimmy couldn't go back to the Sac and Fox Agency school. He just couldn't. "Can't I stay home and work on the farm?" he had asked. "No, my son, a lad your age, must be in school," his father had insisted. "But not back at the agency school." Mr. Thorpe had sighed and then said in a kindly way, "Sometimes you're a stubborn boy, but there's a fine Indian school up in Lawrence, Kansas. I will arrange for you to go there." Still, Jimmy didn't see how his path could be very bright, not without Charlie. What had his father said? "My son, when you follow a path, you must take one step at a time. One day you will reach your goal, and then it will be bright again." Maybe so, thought Jimmy doubtfully. "Lawrence! Lawrence!" the conductor sang out. The train jerked to a stop, and Jimmy started up in his seat. Time to get off. A group of chattering Indian boys dashed for the door. They were all about his own age, but somehow Jimmy hadn't been able to speak to them. He just didn't feel like talking. Out on the station platform, the boys, all in their best buckskin suits, looked around at the town. They didn't have a chance to see much. A stocky, smiling man with a weather-beaten face jumped down from a wagon nearby. "You boys from Haskell?" he asked. "Bring your bundles over here." Whistling merrily, he pushed the boys along. "Elias Dexter, that's me," he said. "I'll see you boys safe to the school. Let's have your names now, boys. Lots of folks that don't belong to the school try to catch rides." He insisted on boosting them up in the wagon. "I'm Albert Thunder," said the first boy as he tossed his bundle into the wagon. Then came Ignatius Iron Road, Joaquin Williams, John Stake, Jake Goey, and John Splitlog. Jimmy hung back until last. Then he scrambled into the wagon by himself. "Jimmy Thorpe," he mumbled. "Well, you're a spry one for such a little fellow." Elias got up in the driver's seat and slapped the horses with his reins. During the whole 2-mile ride, Elias kept up conversation. Finally, they turned in at the school grounds. Indian boys and girls of all ages were walking on the paths or running and shouting on the playgrounds. Haskell Institute looked like a town. It was bigger than Belmont or Stroud or even Prague back in Oklahoma. Jimmy looked with surprise at the big stone buildings. Stone houses, wooden houses, barns, sheds. There must be more than 30 buildings. Elias swung the wagon smartly around a circular drive, and he stopped before a fine big building. Down the steps came a short, quick-moving man. He had a bristling mustache. "Well," said Elias, "here's Mr. Pierce, the superintendent himself, to meet you." Elias insisted on helping the boys down from the wagon, and the superintendent greeted each newcomer. "Now, boys, you come into my office while I get your names," he said. "Then Pocahontas Howlett will take you to your quarters." In a few minutes, Miss Howlett, an Indian girl, took them up to the dormitory for young boys. She assigned their beds. "My, it's getting dark in here," she said, and she went to the door and turned a switch on the wall. Electric lights came on all down through the length of the room. Jimmy was startled. So were the other boys. They stood and stared. Not one had ever seen anything but kerosene lamps. "How do you like our new electric lights?" "Whew," gasped John. "They're magic," said Iggy Ironroad. "Maybe this is some of the new learning I might have," said Jimmy half aloud, and he thought, "They're like thousands of fireflies caught in a jar." "We just got them last year," exclaimed Miss Howlett. As the newcomers started staring, another boy came into the room. He wore the school uniform, short pants and a jacket trimmed with braid along the seams, and he walked up to the bed next to Jimmy's. "Jimmy Thorpe, this is Jonas Swamp," said Miss Howlett. "He'll sleep next to you." "Hello," said Jonas in a friendly way. "I just got here yesterday from Wisconsin. Where are you from?" Jimmy could hardly refuse to answer the smiling boy, although he still didn't feel much like talking. "Why, I come from Oklahoma Indian Territory," he said. "My father has a farm there." Would you like to watch football practice? Jonas asked. My big brother plays on the team. Football? Team? Jimmy was interested. Come on, Jonas urged. Let's hurry. It's getting late. They raced down the stairs. The field is over in the back of the chapel, said Jonas. Do you like sports? Why, yes, Jimmy stammered. His head was swimming with all the new things. He was even more excited as he watched the older boys playing football. While dusk crept over the school, 2 lines of boys would charge at one another. Then they would run and tackle one another, and sometimes they would kick a strange-looking ball, and they were wearing odd padded clothes. Some of the boys even had padded helmets. Any sport interested Jimmy, and this looked like one of the best. Finally, the 2 teams lined up, facing each other. One of the players shot the ball back between his legs. The player who caught it started off to one side. The boys in the other team piled in after him. Just when he was about to be tackled, he slipped the ball to a tall, husky boy who came tearing across the field in the opposite direction. The tall boy had a good running start, and he raced right around several players who reached out for him. He set off down the field with an easy long stride, just the way that Hiram Thorpe ran. Jimmy watched in fascination. The tall Indian cut this way and that, and he managed to dodge away from every player who tried to tackle him. He ran to the end of the field and put the ball down on the ground. A touchdown, Jonas cried. Jimmy was not sure what a touchdown was, but he was thrilled by the way the tall boy had run and dodged. Is that your brother? Oh, no, said Jonas. That's Chauncey Architect. He's new and he plays end. He's mighty good. He looks good, Jimmy answered. It was getting so dark that the players started for the gymnasium to change their clothes, and Jimmy watched Chauncey walking along. There's my brother, James, Jonas pointed to a short, strong-looking lad who wore one of the funny helmets. But Jimmy hardly heard Jonas. His eyes were on Chauncey. I'll just watch him every day, thought Jimmy. I'd like to play this game. Every day at practice time, Jimmy hurried to the football field. Jonas and the others went to the small boys' playground. Now and then Jimmy pricked up his ears at their shouts. He was rather sorry to miss the leapfrog and follow my leader in races they were enjoying. But football was something so new and so exciting he just had to watch. He had found out that Haskell had a school team, and it played teams from other schools. Sometimes the team traveled to nearby towns to play, and the crowds came to see the games. Jimmy recognized all the plays by now and their positions. He studied the way each man played, and James Swamp played guard, and so did big Sal Walker. Sal coached the team too, and his skill in pushing aside the opposing linemen was amazing. Then there was Walter Harris, the chunky Eskimo fullback. Short as he was, he charged like a wild bull. Usually took 2 or 3 tacklers to bring him down. But most of all, Jimmy admired Chauncey Architect. He trailed up and down the sidelines, studying Chauncey's every move. Jimmy would pat Varsity, the flop-eared dog that was the team's mascot. See, when he tackles, he hits hard, Jimmy would tell the dog. Or, there goes Chauncey on the end round play. Then he would just stand open-mouthed and marvel at the easy way Chauncey's long legs covered the ground. Soon the big end began to notice Jimmy. He would nod, and one day he came to the sideline. Hello, kid, he said. What's your name? Jimmy mumbled his answer. Jimmy it is? I guess you like football, eh? Jimmy was tongue-tied, but he nodded. Would you like to have a football and play a little yourself? Would I? Well, let's go see Mr. Robinson at the harness shop. That's where I work, and I'll bet you he can help us make one. Jimmy jogged along beside Chauncey. Mr. Robinson was about to leave the shop, but he was glad to give them some leather scraps and some old rags. Here you are, boys, he said. He hesitated a moment. In fact, I'll just sew them together for you. You'd be here half the night, and I have to close up. In his deft hands, the old scraps began to look like a football. He stuffed in the rag, sewed up the ball, and tossed it to Chauncey. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I'm going to train a new football star here. Have a good time. Chauncey flipped the ball to Jimmy. Without even thinking, Jimmy grabbed the ball and raced away. In high spirits, he twisted and turned just the way he'd seen Chauncey move. He turned and he raced back, and the big end was surprised. He gave a low whistle. Maybe I wasn't wrong about training a star, he thought. The boy can really run. Now the small boys' playground was turned into a football field. There were enough boys for several teams, and Jimmy was having the time of his life. All day he looked forward to athletic period. but he was careful to pay close attention in class. Miss Mack was a very good teacher. He didn't want her to catch him napping. Jimmy often remembered what Charlie had said to him. Does Wathahuk like only the easy things? He vowed he would learn all he could, though school wasn't always easy for him. Charlie had loved school so much. I must learn for him too. In the afternoons, all the boys had chores to do. Jimmy and Iggy and Jonas had many horses and cattle and hogs to feed and tend. Working in the barn was always fun. Jimmy was always happier when he was active, and it seemed like home to pull down hay and fill water troughs. When 4:15 came, he was the first on the playing field, and the football games were like pumpkin pie after a big meal, a real treat. One cool October afternoon, Jimmy and his friends were playing some of the older boys. Already they had 2 touchdowns to none for Jimmy's team. Try as they would, the younger boys could not gain. The 2 teams lined up for scrimmage, and John called the signal for a kick. From his halfback position, Jimmy looked across the opening team. There was Ernest Tredo, their best running back, playing back to catch the kick. I don't want Ernie to get the ball, thought Jimmy. He's too dangerous. He might get loose for a long run. John barked the signal for the play to start, and Jonas at center sent the ball back to Jimmy. Jimmy grabbed the squishy ball, aimed for the sideline, and kicked with all his might. The ball didn't fly very high or very far, but it went over to the side where Jimmy had aimed, away from Ernest. Ernest had to run way over to get the ball. By the time he picked it up, Jonas and Iggy and John were upon him. With a burst of speed, Ernest dodged them all, but Jimmy came running up and tackled him nearly around the knees. They hit the ground with a crash. Jimmy jumped up instantly, but Ernest was slower. Jimmy grabbed him by the arm and helped him up, and then darted back to his position. John was shaking with laughter. Come on, John, let's stop them now, Jimmy urged. What's the joke? It was funny to see you pick up Ernie, John answered. He's about twice as big as you are. Jimmy hadn't thought about it. He grinned. I thought maybe he was hurt. Jonas laughed too. You thought he was hurt? I was worried about you. The 2 teams lined up again. The older boys tried end runs, but first Albert and Jonas cut through and then tackled the runner without gain. Along the sidelines, Chauncey and James strolled along to watch. It was last down for Ernie's team, and Ernie took the ball for a plunge right through center. Jonas was blocked out of the way, and Ernie had a big opening. I've got to stop him, Jimmy thought. Like a flash, he dashed in from the halfback position. Crash! He piled head-on into Ernie. They went down in a heap. Again, Jimmy jumped up first, but this time he didn't try to help Ernie. His own head was swimming. Jimmy staggered around. He shook his head, and in a minute he felt all right. Our ball, he shouted. On the sideline, Chauncey gave a surprise whistle. James, did you see that tackle? I saw it, but it's hard to believe such a small boy could hit so hard. The 2 teams lined up. It's almost time for supper, Jimmy thought. We ought to make a touchdown real quick. He begged, let me run it, John. Perhaps we should let Iggy have the ball on the guard back to the play, said John. Perhaps. Oh, go on, call something, Jonas said. We can't wait all day. John called Jimmy's signal, and Jimmy grabbed the ball and started around the end. They won't stop me this time, he muttered. Albert blocked out the opposing end. Jimmy swung wide, and with a quick dodge, he got past the halfback. Only Ernest was in his way. Running hard, Jimmy thought quickly. Ernie is faster than me, but I can try to fool him. Ernie charged for Jimmy with all his speed. Just as the older boy was about to crash into him, Jimmy stopped short. Ernie's speed carried him right on by. He stumbled and fell, and in a flash, Jimmy was running full speed again, and no one could catch him. With a big grin, he planted the ball over the goal line, and all his teammates ran up to slap him on the back. On the sideline, it was James' turn to whistle. He looks like another architect. 2 feet shorter and 200 pounds lighter, he said with a smile. The boy will be very good one day, said Chauncey, if he ever grows.